One of the benefits of having Smith Micro be the software custodian of both Poser and Anime Studio Pro is that they play rather well together. And by that I mean Anime Studio Pro can bring in 3D content from Poser, including entire scenes, walk cycles, cool stuff like that. Let me show you what I mean. And before I get started, a few quid pro quos as we get going. Under Preferences, on the Options tab down at the very bottom is Poser Location. If you do not have Poser, the files that come along with this demonstration simply aren't going to work, because what Anime Studio does is it places a proxy of the file into Anime, and then it uses the Poser engine to control and run everything. So all the code that Poser has is leveraged into Anime Studio Pro to make things work. The files I've created for this were created with Poser Pro 2014, a fantastic program. And if you try to open it with, say, a Poser 8, because you have Poser 8 linked to maybe, or an older version, something like that, I don't believe the files will play. They need to be on the same version number of the application program. So with that said, let's close this up, come down to Import, and we'll choose Poser Scene. Now, in this case, I'm just working with a single Poser character. We could import entire scenes built in Poser real easily. And we're going to import Poser Droid. I'll click. And look how fast this character comes in. And as I scale it, you'll notice the body parts change to these strange little cubes. And when I release the mouse, we actually see the character. Well, that's because it's referencing the geometry and using the Poser software to drive it. Kind of nice. Okay, well, we want to do what with this character? Well, you can really do anything you want. You have to come over to the tools on the left-hand side and click the special Poser tool to work with the file. If I click a body part, it looks like nothing happens. On your system, depending on how it's configured, you might have this window pop up, which is what we want, the Poser parameters. When I do that, we get a nice little window that is very familiar to people working with Poser, and that are essentially, these are parameter dials. And it allows us to make changes to anything we select. So in the case of right shoulder, move this up a little bit. Or I want this to come forward. And we can see that we get a 2D representation of our character very, very easily. If I go ahead and do a render real quick, or preview render, we'll see that we get a nice toon effect to our character right there. We can double click on the Poser file, go to the 3D options, and change some of these other types of things here. I can change none in terms of the shading style, and we can wind up with just a very simple, featureless type of character. I'll just choose OK. We'll close that and let it go away. How about legs? Well, Poser has inverse kinematics automatically built into the legs, and so it is importing that information from the file. If you turn off inverse kinematics inside of the Poser file, or engage it for the hands, then you have to move things just a little bit differently. You can't really move and click the body parts real efficiently inside of Anime Studio Pro. You can grab and do very limited work, and it usually doesn't turn out the way you want. So I'm going to come back down here and click the foot. And in this case, I'm going to say, okay, let's translate on the Z-axis just a little bit, and we will raise this up. And I'll say, okay, let's go ahead and go side to side a little bit if we can. Or let me move the X translate over. Now when I come to say like the thigh, I'll highlight that. Click it twice to make sure it shows up here in my parameter dials area. If I happen to do a side to side this way, not seeing a whole lot of motion there. How about twist? There, we can see that curve out just a little bit. So it's very easy to go ahead and control some of the features if you want to work with that this way inside of Poser. If I select the chest and again do a bend operation right there, we see our character moving. Really nice way to work with the really sophisticated content of Poser inside of Anime Studio Pro.